Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Ipswich in Queensland, round 7 of the V8 Supercar Championship. We're broadcasting the panel beaters live with you on this beautiful Friday night from Ipswich Raceway with Neil Crompton, Gregory Rust and Bradley Jones for another exciting instalment of the panel beaters. Now, he always moans and groans like an old... I won't say it.
This is Cameron McConville. Welcome to the
Shut up. We haven't done that part yet.
Oh, when you started the moaning and groaning, I thought you were talking about Cam as a Garth.
No, Garth's my mate. The last time he was here, he was an angry young man, and this time I just want him to be in a peaceful, calm state where he enjoys the witty repartee.
You swore you'd never have him back on.
Yeah, that was after the show when we said that, when we slagged him. But you know the rules. When he's here, you say nice things about him. It's only after he walks out you give him
anyway, Brad's moaning.
No. Yeah, anyway, Brad's moaning and groaning. Normally the deal is that Bradley is introduced after Greg, but he moans about it like a...
On everything, I'm listed behind Greg Rust.
What?
On everything, I'm listed behind Greg Rust.
So you should be. Welcome to the program, Brad Jones. What a horrible intro this has been. Just Sheffield Shield clap for Bradley. Keep that applause going for my man on the left here, my teammate, Gregory Aloysius.
Good evening, Neil. How are you? It's great to be here. Queensland.
It's almost a test crowd, that one.
Terrific.
Did you catch your cricket last night? It was unbelievable.
No, there was something bigger going on in the world than the cricket last night.
What was on?
In England.
In England. It was in England, but it was just in a different suburb, different postcode. Oh, some bloke and firecrackers.
Yeah, I know.
You should get in touch with the real world, Bradley.
In fact, cricket was the only other thing on.
He enjoys his own humour. I'd like to welcome to the panel this evening two special guests. I did mention him before by name, an old friend of ours, Garth Tander. Welcome back.
Well, thank you.
What sort of a mood you're in?
I'm in a great mood, Neil.
Fantastic.
I won't give you a slagging tonight.
Good. So
he's fourth.
You were filthy. Yeah, there's always a good reason to be happy.
I'd say he's on top of the world.
And a bloke who rode here from Melbourne. He rides everywhere now because, well, the fact of the matter is that the budget's shrunk, so they've now got corporate bicycles they get around on. Please welcome back to the program, Cameron McConville.
Thanks, Neil. It's fantastic to be here. I haven't been on for a while, and I can say that you've gone downhill.
Thanks, mate.
Don't get into it, mate. You won't get invited back.
Oh,
that's right. You'll go.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah.
All right. Someone write his name down.
I'm detecting an aura here. I think this is linked to their positions today, perhaps. Garth 4th, Cam 25th. Yeah. Is there anything to read into that?
McConville, angry young man.
There's a lot to be read into that. The show isn't quite long enough.
Yeah. Angry young man, McConville. Don't use again. All right. What's the story?
With me?
Yeah.
I've got the flu. Other than that, that probably makes about a second a lap around here.
That has actually knocked you around a fair bit, hasn't it? It was a decent old day.
I'm glad we're racing this weekend, Rusty. Last week, I was bedridden, really. I think everyone's had it. People came back from China with it. I don't know whether someone brought back some imported disease, but just chest and lung
Some people
infection.
have, but that's probably a whole different story.
That's true.
Nothing to do with the flu.
He's sitting next to me here. But,
I was about to ask you who you've been sleeping with, but I didn't want to bring that up on air.
No, myself.
Let's
actually,
go
I've been
through what's
away a
happened
lot.
today, because this is just getting off to a rip-roaring turbocharged start. 2 hours of practice today with a maximum cap of laps for the first practice session for the Queensland 300 this weekend, and Mark Scaife was the fastest man, stealing the thunder from the locals, which was interesting, by a very small margin, just 0.01 of a second. Scaife to Ambrose, then Craig Lowndes in third position, Garth Tander in fourth. Happy Garth Tander. Russell Ingall was in fifth position. Steve Ellery was sixth. And then Jason Bright, Glenn Seaton, Stephen Richards 10th. Paul Morris, Max Wilson, Simon Wills, Rick Kelly.
Did you miss
Mark
Stephen
Winterbottom.
Johnson in there? I think you missed Stephen
Did
Johnson.
Did I do a jump? Did I jump right
P7.
over?
P7.
See, this is what happens when you get old, because you just start missing lines, you start forgetting things.
You weren't so vain you could wear your glasses.
I don't need glasses, you tongue chewer.
Welcome to the panel beaters. I'm Neil Crompton. It's great to have you with us.
It's too late. Everyone at home knows you've got a birthday coming up and you wear glasses off air. Okay, move on.
I'll have you know.
Hey, nothing wrong with wearing glasses, is there, Garth?
That's right.
Fourth.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, you don't actually take them off when you're driving. You go fast.
Was that the 100-metre board?
Better break.
Actually,
where was
funny. I remember, speaking of people with glasses, a very funny experience once was a young Neil Crompton in a commentary booth.
Must have been a while ago.
It was at a 12-hour, I think, or something at Eastern Creek. And do you remember when Will Hagen said to you, well, you know, people wearing glasses, there's not too many people that are any good with that, is there, Neil? And Neil goes, Larry Perkins, John Bowe. And in the end, Will's like, And he's rattled through about 15 people. just bang. Just kept on going through the whole.
Willie mentioned
it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
The drivers, there's no drivers that are quick with glasses, so there's heaps of them.
He's rattled everyone that was ever born. It was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
I don't get any Christmas cards from Willie anymore. I don't understand why. Where was I before Gregory rudely interrupted? Sorry, Stephen Johnson. I got to 10th. It's like a roll call, isn't it? Then Paul Morris, Max Wilson, who was off the road a bit today, Simon Wills, Rick Kelly, Mark Winterbottom, Greg Ritter, Paul Wheel, Todd Kelly, last round winner and previous round of that, Paul Radisich, Bargwana, Bow. John Bow will be a guest on our program tonight, and he's over in the green room at the moment, just working himself into a lather on the couch.
Our team look after him here, don't they?
We've got a lot of facilities to keep a racing driver accustomed to in the way that he's become over the years, whatever that sentence was. Paul Radisich, Jason Bargwana, John Bow, Jamie Wincup, Jason Richards, Greg Murphy, Cameron McConville, Craig Baird, Steve Owen, Matt White, Brad Jones, David Bernard, Andrew Jones, Paul Dumbrell, Anthony Tratt, Alex Davison. 34 cars in this field this weekend. So interesting, gentlemen, that Scafie's got his thing stoked along pretty well and stealing a little bit of thunder from the locals, which is not an easy thing to do given the amount of testing that they do here.
Oh, pretty impressive effort, I thought, but I'm sure, Scafie will find something to run into or spear off if current form goes his way. I mean, I'm not being harsh on him, but...
not
at all. No, not at all.
There he is here at the door.
Mark. Coming, Mark.
One of the innovations on the program is that we just throw in sound effects out of the blue like that. But one of the innovations on the program now is that we're podcasting. You blokes in that sort of demographic that you understand what podcasting is?
Oh, yeah.
See, you're getting old. See, you need to be young and hip. Young and hip, mate. I'm young and hip. Podcasting means that you can now download this program to your iPod.
Right.
On the website.
Is that available for this show?
Yeah. It's on the...
Next time you're training...
Can we log how many people actually do that?
We can.
And how are those numbers going?
Those numbers are huge.
Good to hear. We're in double figures.
That's right. And the point that I was going to make is that you feel at the moment like your words are live, Cameron. You can get away with anything, but you don't know. Scafie may well
have it on his iPod.
He may.
All I was saying is that recently he's been starting the weekend at the top of the timesheet, and it kind of goes away from there. So hopefully he can, have a good trouble-free weekend along with myself.
Actually, a lot of the local guys in the press conference this afternoon were saying how different the track was today to when they tested here last week. The weather conditions and the rubber that's gone down just in the one day from the development series and the 2-hour session has changed the track quite a bit. And then we're actually about 1.5 seconds a lap faster than what they tested last week. So even they're saying that they've changed their car quite a bit. I couldn't imagine they've changed a lot, but they've changed it. They reckon they've changed their car.
I stood on the wall at one stage today, and you could see quite a heavy black groove in turn 5 there on the race line. So there was a bit of rubber down.
1 and 2 you could as well. The other thing that surprised me, it's only been 12 months since we've been here, but it gets rougher every year.
I spoke to Ross Stone about that today, and he said in that period, because they test you, obviously they've noticed the change along the way. But even some that have cropped up that perhaps weren't there before between turns 1 and 2, is there a bump there now that wasn't there last year?
There's definitely a bump in the middle of turn 2 that wasn't there last year, and the bumps at turn 1 go much further into the apex.
Into that,
And
how bad are those?
Popped out of gear today on me once, going in there. Like as I brake, popped out of fifth.
Going into one, that'd be fun.
Yeah, it's busy, particularly when you actually slot second instead of fourth.
Oh, right.
But it does cause some de-acceleration.
And a bit of gasket cement comes out of your nose.
Has no trouble pointing the car in, though.
Because I'm crook as it is, I can't handle all of that.
But you know what used to bother me about that? When you have one of those fumbles and you still manage to catch it and stay online, you think, I mustn't have been braking far enough in there. Because, those days where you half miss the brake pedal or whatever and you sort of gather it all back up and it still works, you think, well, what's all the fuss about? What's going on there?
Those bumps over on the way into 3 are really... It's like riding a wave into the shore, isn't it? It's just
which is a bit of a shame because that's obviously a good passing opportunity here, and the fact that it now unweights the inside front wheel means it's prone to locking. It's harder to now have a nibble at somebody if you do want to have a vigorous race, and you're on the dirty side anyway if you go down the inside.
You've got to be 100% side by side before you even jump on the brakes to consider having a passing move into there, just because without locking up and spearing into the guy.
Yeah, or let whoever's on the outside lets them go.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What do you reckon, race fans? 300 or near enough to a 300k race again this weekend. Change of format. Tempo is very different now to the sprint races we've had in the recent past.
Well, it's different. It's a good lead-in, I guess. We got the Sandown 500 in Bathurst coming up shortly. So this circuit does. I mean, we often say when we come here that it's not the most exciting circuit we go to, but
racing's always
puts up good racing. So it allows a lot for strategy here. You can play with different strategies with fuel loads and tyre stops and things like that. So it'll be an interesting race, and a lot of people will make mistakes in this one because it's so much heavy braking. The brakes do tend to go away a bit here. So late in the race, I wouldn't be surprised to see a few safety cars or guys just sliding off the circuit.
HSV dealer team cars have come on a bit in the recent past, and obviously you had a great round up in Darwin at the last round. You won a race, which is a nice little bit of refreshment and sugar for you and your blokes. Where's this coming from?
We're not doing anything different. That's I guess the encouraging thing is that yes, we had 2 cars on the podium at Darwin, and we're in the top 5 here this weekend. But we were actually saying on the way to the press conference, we've been to quite a few practice press conferences already this year, so we've been in the top 5 to 10 quite a bit this year. It's just been luck that's taken me out of the event. So hopefully we've got all our bad luck from the first half of the year gone, and now we can just press on with getting results in the second half of the season.
You had hoped to test last Friday at Phillip Island, but there was some inclement weather there, and I think only Super Cheap Auto went in the end. Ford Performance Racing, yourself and HRT were scheduled to go, but I think they were the only ones that ended up going perhaps. Has that hurt you, do you think? Would it have helped to build on Darwin if you'd gone there? If the weather was right?
Yeah, we would have liked to have tested, there's no doubt about that. And we went down to Phillip Island and unloaded the truck and sat around and watched the waterfall out of the sky for a couple of hours and decided we'll pack up and go home.
Imagine that at Phillip Island.
In the middle of the year, Phillip Island, who would have thought it would rain down there?
Incredible.
So Super Cheap continued to test, and they tested in the wet, and then apparently they got 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon to dry. So it would have been nice to test, but we weren't going to dump half a day by running around in the wet because it's just not beneficial to improving the car. But we rolled the car out of the truck here pretty good, and it was pretty close straight away. And it's always encouraging, those first 3 or 4 laps. If you can say to the guys, "Yep, the car's got grip. We've just got to tune it."
Yeah,
then
half a chance.
You're for a good weekend, and that's exactly how it was.
We opened the show making reference to the fact that you're the big bicycle rider, but there is a point to that story because of
Lance McConville.
Yeah, Lance McConville.
Cameron McArmstrong.
No, come on, he's about to retire. Let him retire.
And he's going to go pretty well.
Now I know it would have been a real.
Have you been watching it? It's been fantastic.
Would have been a tough choice for you this weekend, Ipswich or Tour de France.
I know. Well, I'm trying to mix both, really. I'm up till about 4 a.m.
He gets on the wind trainer and rides all night while it's on the telly, and then he has a bit of sleep.
That's the reason why you crook, you lunatic.
Yeah,
you're
I'm riding
fit.
too much.
Everyone's
been saying that, but I haven't been really training a lot for this
I can
crazy
tell you
bike ride.
all you need to do is eat
2 years ago.
more hamburgers and just generally goof off. And
I'm working on that. Andrew likes the odd chip. He's been hanging around you too long.
That's right.
Around with his uncle too much.
Nothing wrong with eating chocolate.
Now I have fries for breakfast. Now I hang around with him.
Tell us a bit more about it, though, because we talked...
Eat too much, you'll end up lactose intolerant.
Really?
Yeah,
don't go there.
Let's not happen.
You're calling it Climb to the Mountain, and you've got some, sponsors in place, and there's going to be some good money raised for charity. Just outline what you're doing.
Well, it's all for Make-A-Wish Foundation, and it's a very good cause. Andrew and I came up with the idea coming back from a Repco gig on an aeroplane when we were bored, and it seemed like a great idea at the time, but... Little did we know that, I'd end up crook, we'd be busy, and we actually wouldn't even get to train for this thing. Now we're probably regretting it a little bit.
When does it start?
16th of September.
I'm in training.
Yeah, I know you're coming. There's no excuse, Brad, because we ride past your front door out of Albury, and it's at 11 o'clock in the morning, so you should be right.
So I'm going to start at Wodonga. I'm going to start at Wodonga, and then
go to Albury.
Go to the other side of Albury. It's got to be 6K.
Just go to Lavington or in the workshop.
And it's on a dragster too you're using, aren't you? The big old dragster. It's not a racing bike.
Actually, a couple of sponsors said they'll put in double if you'll do it on a fixed gear. On a single
penny
speed.
farthing.
And he'll have the transporter out the other side of town to take him back.
But it's only, it's 1,070 Ks all up. I've driven it in the car now, mapped it out over 10 days.
Mapped it
From
out.
Albert Park to Bathurst?
Albert Park to Bathurst. This bloke here says he's going to come for 1 day or 2.
A good 10K. I'll join the drive.
At least for the 2-lap time trial around Albert Park at the start.
Like all relatives, I've made a few good suggestions to Andrew in regards to this bicycle ride that you're doing, and he just takes none of it on board. First thing was I thought you were actually riding up, like a week before the race, and staying there. And he said to me, "Don't be crazy. We need to have a rest."
Yeah.
So I said, "Well, why don't you start at Bathurst and ride to Melbourne?"
Why? Because it's downhill.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
That's a good call.
I can't believe you took my gag.
Well, we're finishing with a lap of Bathurst,
and
so
you're actually
it'll
inviting
be a time
people
trial
to
around there.
You're inviting people to come and join you for that part of the
we're inviting
trip
people for the start. There's many people really for the start and the finish, and we'll get a lot of... I've met with the Bathurst City Council. They're going to encourage bicycle clubs to ride with us. Meet at a certain time. It'll be, I think it's around 2 o'clock at the track. We're coming in from Cowra that day.
I'm going to come and watch you go from Cowra, a couple of those hill climbs. That'll be good.
That'll be good. Cheer us on. Run along. Can you run along with a shirt around your head, chasing up alongside us?
I was hoping we could get Crompton on a motorbike to run over me like that guy did on the tour the other night.
Yeah.
And there's Brad Jones in the yellow leader's jersey. He's making good pace.
I climb down hills a lot better than I climb up.
What about some of the locations along the way? Is there some terrain you got to negotiate, or a couple of low towns?
There's a few low towns. No, they're all good towns. One of the.
Remember, we are podcasting now.
Well, the hardest.
That was Cameron in backpedal.
No, exactly, spinning backwards at a rapid rate. The hardest day is probably day one, Melbourne to Seymour. It's 140 kilometres, and we go out through Whittlesea.
You hadn't penciled me in for day one, had you?
Yeah, you're in day one, mate.
Can I join at day two now?
Most I've ever done in a day is like 85, and that's hard.
Downhill. That's probably our smallest day, 77. But we're going Albury, we're going Seymour, Shepparton, Wodonga, Albury. Then
on the beaten track, like on the freeways? You're going to
No, we're staying off the Hume most of the way. Right. Across to Canberra, because Tattersalls are fantastic sponsors, want us to call in there. And then back up to Cowra and Bathurst.
It's good that you found some mountains to go to then on the way, which is handy.
Yeah, we'll be right. Be all good. It's character building.
Welcome back to Queensland Raceway. Unfortunately, we had a little drama with the power there a moment ago. And, actually, the reality is that Cameron stopped pedalling. And that was the thing that I was about to ask him. What's going to happen if you can't make it up one of these hills and you get to the 35k mark in one of these days and you got blisters on your bum and you just go, I'm not going to do this anymore?
We hadn't contemplated failure, to be honest.
Failure is not an option.
No, we've got about $30,000 to raise. At the moment, we've got about 30 grand together for Make-A-Wish, so it's not an option. Just got to press on, and we'll have a van, plenty of rest. We'll have intravenous drip of caffeine going in that arm. And some way or another, we've got to come. Actually, one or two pro cyclists are going to come the whole way. So when we're tired, we'll stick them on the front and we'll sit in behind them. Just my brother-in-law races A grade. He's doing the Melbourne to Warrnambool.
Some guy called Armstrong's from America.
Yeah, some bloke.
But no, looking forward to it, and it's for a great cause. So it should be big.
Now, email is a part of our show, as you gentlemen know. We like to encourage for our viewers and listeners to be able to fire some questions at us so that we can throw you heavyweight panellists some curly questions. We've got one here from Andrew saying, ever since the start of 2004, the commentator to race driver chat during the safety cars has disappeared, and as a loyal viewer, it was great to get the driver's view in the middle of the battle. A few great examples of this were the final race at Sandown in 2002 with Lowndes and Scaife. And also Ambrose, Murphy and Ingle. Chatting in the cars in the middle of the race is pretty hard. It can happen sometimes when the safety car's out, but it's not an easy thing to do, is it, gents?
You mean
great answer, boys.
To the television, or you're talking about
both for that matter, but that's what Andrew's saying.
Nowadays,
is
it would be almost... I used to speak when I was racing, and things are a little more
What are you doing now?
Well, you can't talk. It's too busy.
No, you said when you were racing. What do you do now?
Oh, okay. Earlier on.
Yeah. But you mean under safety car things? Sometimes it's hard technically, isn't it? It's a hard thing to make happen. Like, that seems to be more of the problem.
It can be.
Keep people
a lot of the time, too, it depends on what race it is. And sometimes if we go and talk to your key blokes in pit lane, if you're in the heat of battle and they're trying to get you back focused on the job at hand, they don't really want to upset the rhythm too much.
The problem is there's a small gap, as you know, when the safety car's out, and if we crash over, it stops all two-way conversation between you guys and the crew. So,
I think it
and obviously there's some strategy involved in some of that.
It depends on the length of the safety car. I mean, I think if we know that's going to be a safety car for 5 or 6 laps, then you can probably squeeze a lap or two of chat in. But
plus the other thing is Steve Wood, the producer's probably trying to just put his own stamp on the telecast. Do you think? And he just doesn't like it. He's just booted it.
Yeah.
2-time Logie winner. He can't argue with the man.
Enough already. Panelbeaters at bigpond.com. We want to hear from you this evening on the program. Here's one from Gene of Warrnambool.
You're an idiot.
How long do the V8 fans have to wait for ticket prices to be announced for the Phillip Island round later this year? That's one we might have to follow up on. I'm not aware of of that at this stage. We'll look into that for you and we'll give you an answer at some stage.
We'll get an answer for that one. And we've got one for one of our panellists that's coming up shortly, John Bow, and we'll throw that one at John in the next 10 minutes or so. He's asking what John's plans are for next year. Probably more appropriate to address Bradley on that one. What are John's plans next year, Bradley?
He's going to be driving for me again.
Well, there you go. Straight from the horse's mouth, and that's sure is one horse over there.
One thing we perhaps didn't get a chance to ask Cam before that we maybe should. We spoke to you at Darwin. There's been some engineering changes behind the scenes with your team. Where are you at this weekend? Because Steve Kramer was basically looking after 2 cars in Darwin. What's happening here?
Well, we've got Tommy Smith back, who was my engineer last year for pretty much most of the season. He's working with Andrew, and Steve Kramer now is solely, I suppose, on my car as far as for the race weekends. Steve's still overseeing how the cars leave the workshop, and then Tommy Smith's come back on board, so at least now we've got 2 engineers for the race weekends, although it's probably not ideal that they're both only part-time, so it's still, it's a temporary fix, I suppose.
Gary rang me after...
I bet he did. I couldn't believe
Darwin. Yeah. Oh, I didn't sack him. We're talking about Phil Curtis, your engine. I didn't sack him. He just wasn't available to travel and stuff.
I've got a question for these two, which Neil will be able to rate.
You go, Brad.
Go,
Steve Kramer, you both had him as your engineer. Now, it's amazing to think that he was the best motocrosser in Australia a long time ago, isn't it? He was Mr. Motocross, yeah. Absolutely, he was a gun.
He wasn't Mr. Motocross.
As in a rider or as in tuning cars?
No, as in a rider.
He was a rider. He was Mr. Motocross on a 370 RM Suzuki.
He wasn't Mr. Motocross.
I'm telling you, he was Mr. Motocross.
Well, we've got a blue happening here, folks. Stand by.
He didn't.
I'm sure he did.
He rode in it, but he was never Mr. Motocross.
You sure?
Yeah.
He was a gun.
Look, he was a gun. He was very good.
Yeah.
So what's that?
He used to ride Millage Brothers Yamaha.
No, he didn't.
Number 94.
Not to start with. He was on a
What is the question?
I was there. I raced against him, Pelican Head.
He's got the same sort of shape as Bargs. It's amazing to think that he was a very, very good motocrosser, wouldn't you say?
The same sort of shape.
But yeah, he's like a ball. He doesn't look
Where
like an
are
athlete.
you going with this?
Well, I'm just saying, it's hard to believe a bloke.
Yeah, but he spends a lot of time behind a desk now, so he's probably not quite as fine
Gee, that works well, didn't
he? Yeah, he's talking to you. Don't slouch.
Don't slouch.
I'm
Focus.
sure he was a great motocrosser.
This has been a mess.
Yeah.
We're going to tidy it all up. We thank Garth and we thank Cameron for their time this evening.
It's been seamless.
It's been seamless. Have a great weekend. Good luck from 4th and 44th or wherever you are at the moment.
It's only Friday.
Hey,
Mate, it's only Friday, 25th. I know, it can be very painful.
It's a long race.
It is a long race. And
luckily.
Good luck this weekend, mate. And we'll see you both over the course of the weekend. And we shall take a break on the panel beaters, get all this cleaned up and welcome in some new guests right after this.
This is the Panel Beaters live on Big Pond. We're broadcasting from Queensland Raceway for round 7 of the V8 Supercar Championship Series. Neil Crompton, Brad Jones, Greg Rust, and we're now joined by 2 special guests from the West Point Dick Johnson Racing Team, running in the Development Series this weekend, but very much a part of their endurance lineup. We welcome Will Davison. How are you, mate?
Yeah, great, guys. Good to be here.
And, of course, teammate to our own Bradley Jones. What about a nice round of applause for John Bauer?
Thank you. It's an absolute honour to be sitting at the same table as Bradley.
I know, it's an honour for us. It's great to have a living legend on board.
Thank you.
Now, day one, how have things gone for you, JB?
Well, I'm a little disappointed because we went quite well here last year, and I did a lot of testing here when I drove for Cat, so I'm a bit disappointed. I'm down the order, not quite as far down as Cameron.
The boys commented before that things are, the bumps in particular, are more pronounced.
Yeah, the bumps are certainly much worse than I can remember them, but I mean, at my age, my memory's not like it was, so, it's given us a few problems. I'm a bit, disappointed, but looking at all the data, which is, part and parcel of the job nowadays, it doesn't really show itself all that much, so...
Where do you feel the car's weak at the moment, John?
It's certainly weak into turn 3, in and out of turn 3.
Weak as in right over the bumps?
Right over the bumps, yeah. And it's, whilst I don't think it's terrible into and through turn 1, it's not a happy camper. So, it's a very fine line between, pressing it too hard and running out of road or staying on the road.
Talking earlier in the day about, I think it was the very first race meeting here in '99 when the track was brand new, and you did an unbelievable time in qualifying, which I don't think has ever been eclipsed, has it? It was a 9.4 or 3 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, and, not quite sure how I did that.
Yeah, it just tell us about that.
I don't.
It still remains the practice record.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah.
The track was very smooth because it had just been built, and I mean, I think now it needs a revamp. Now, whether or not the guys that run it have got enough finance to do that. But it's really it's so bumpy. It's not even pleasant, you know. So
have you got a bit of a cold?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I haven't.
Haven't been too close to camera McConville
No,
by
I
any
haven't.
chance.
No,
You
I
two haven't been doing a little bike ride in the dark together, because it was dark here a couple of times in the last half
He
hour.
rides a lot faster than me, let me tell you.
Well, he wasn't over there on that couch with you, was he? In the panel beaters green room.
No, he wasn't. I tried to stay right away from him actually, but it got me anyway.
JB, this probably won't make your day a hell of a lot better. You were 21st in that 2-hour session.
Thanks for pointing that out.
With a 1:11.2.
Yes.
Now, Will Davison has joined us. He said the third fastest time in qualifying for the HPDC development race in an old model AU Ford with Dick Johnson Racing, a 1:11.4.
Well, he's young. he is very young
and talented.
And very talented. And very talented, yeah. So, anyway, we hope to go better tomorrow, but it's not as clear as it should be. You know, the reason why we're a bit off the pace. So.
And you had a head-on accident during that session, John.
Yeah,
Talk us through that.
Oh, thanks, Brad. Jason Richards was in front of me coming into turn 3, locked the rear brakes up and slid off the road, and then sort of drove back on as I was trying to go around the corner.
You're kidding?
I'm like, no, it's really, it was quite weird.
And brought both of you to a stop, obviously.
Well, sort of a stop, yeah. We bounced
How
off
much
each other.
damage?
Oh, it bent the steering and ripped the front off the left.
Have you spoken to it?
No. I'm sure he didn't see me. But
He went down and thumped him, but that was about it.
He didn't
wasn't
speak
much
to him.
talking going on.
No, he didn't speak to him. He just gave him a belt.
No, Jason's a good bloke. I mean, he wouldn't have seen me. So it's just one of those weird things, you know, when your day's hasn't risen above the mercury level. That's what happens.
Now, Will, a busy weekend for you, but more importantly, even perhaps like a very busy weekend for your race team. They're fielding more cars than you can poke a stick at the moment, but a great opportunity for you to get some kilometres in the car. You tested strongly here the other day, and it looks like, based on the times that we're seeing here in the development series, you're doing very well.
Yeah, no, it's been good to get back behind the wheel. Obviously, haven't been in a race car really properly since the Grand Prix, so. It's good to dust off a few of the cobwebs, and they've brought the old AU out as well from the corner, and it's a big task for them running 5 cars.
Yeah, it's an amazing job, isn't it?
They're doing a good job, you know. They've put quite a bit of work into the car, and
so just rattle off there. You got obviously the 2 cars of Glenn and Stephen in the main game. Who else they got?
Dean Canto and Grant Denyer.
Right. Okay. Yep. So 5 cars. That
and Will, that's 5.
That'd be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
You are on it, Neil. There's no doubt about that.
Well, because I've been so busy studying what's going on out there and talking to all my mates. I didn't see all of the information in the development series category, and I was wondering whether or not either Dean or whether Grant weren't running today to make room for Will.
No.
Thanks for highlighting that, though, Bradley. That was really good.
This is all part of the build-up for you, though, toward the Enduros. Now, have you figured out there whether you'll be with Glenn or with Stephen or with Dean? What's the mix look like there in terms of the driver lineup?
Yeah, they haven't made an announcement yet. I think they're going to look at things after this weekend. So, naturally, the test day I've done, I've made a bit of an insert for Steve's car, naturally, size-wise, and Dean's made one in Glenn's car. And they were just going to see how I got on and then decide what they were going to do. So far, so good, I suppose. The test went really well last Friday, and sort of kept the thing straight, and times have been pretty good. So see how we get through tomorrow and Sunday.
Sorry to interrupt. How much did the disruption of what happened earlier in the year sort of affect the way things have gone for you this year? I mean, has that been hard to climb over for you?
Not really. You've just got to get on with things, you know. And now I look back in hindsight, and I'm sort of glad I'm not particularly involved with that group, and I'm happy with where I'm at the moment. The bad side is, I think when I came home from Europe last year, there was probably a couple other options for me, and I was persuaded pretty heavily into that option, which, obviously I regret now, but you live and learn. Yeah. And it was pretty heartbreaking at the time, I suppose.
What stopped you driving? Was it just you just couldn't agree to terms? Was that what the problem was?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you could basically say, on the Sunday of the Grand Prix, Tony said potentially he'd like to run me.
We should just give everybody a bit of background here. We're talking about team dynamic, and then Tony Longhurst became involved, and there was an opportunity where you may have been able to continue with him.
Yeah, that's right. Initially, when Tony had decided he was going to race for the year, it was going to be, unfortunately for Simon, I mean, they'd said to us that he was going to have to stand down for the year, and obviously I was disappointed for him. But I had a contract, and they said they were definitely going to honour that, and that's why it was Tony and myself at the Grand Prix. And then Tony said he'd potentially like to run me under his car. So before anything else, we sort of thought he could put something forward to us on paper, and it sort of got to us very late in the day, which was, I think, the Wednesday night at Clipsal. I was just told I was racing, so that's all I needed to worry about. And then Tony put something forward to me, which is his prerogative. It's his franchise. He can do what he wants. Yeah. And obviously, in the space of a couple of hours, I couldn't come to an agreement with him. Therefore, I thought I'd be back in the 44 car like originally promised, but that wasn't the case.
Had you taken any sponsorship to them or anything?
No, absolutely not. Okay. That's obviously why I've...
We should try and fire through some emails here, and we'd encourage our listeners and viewers to fire some in. Panelbeaters@bigpond.com. There's plenty of things that we'd like to talk about. At the moment, got one here. Love the show, guys. I've heard 2 rumours about next year. Any chance, if you can tell us if there's some truth to them, that the Queensland 300 will be moved to Townsville and raced as a street race there? I don't think that's the case, but Townsville is obviously something that's a talking point at the moment.
It is, and what would I know? As team owners certainly don't know much about what's going on at the moment, but really I think our show is so big that usually it needs a state government behind it to promote a street race because there's such expensive things to put on, and I'd say someone's put some money up, they're having a bit of a look at it to see if it's a viable proposition, and it would have a long way to go, so I don't think I'd be worried about it too much in the short term.
Yeah, the Avesco Australian V8 Supercar company have said today that first of all the 2 of them are not linked in any way, so there may be a Townsville race at some stage, but it will not be at the expense of this event.
Not necessarily be.
No, and it can't be because obviously this area is South East Queensland's a major market.
We had a good crowd for a Friday today, too, didn't we?
Major market, a lot of passion for it out here, a lot of people based on the Gold Coast. There will be a race in this area and there will still be the race on the Gold Coast, but premature to suggest that the Townsville race will happen in 2006, but it's certainly being discussed, and we've all said, I think, at different times in the last decade how good it would be for us to have a round in North Queensland. There's obviously a huge market. They're very V8 Supercar passionate. If you follow the television figures over the years, there's always been a massive response in Queensland to the category, not only in the metro areas but also in the regional areas. So I think, I can safely say on behalf of just about everybody in the industry, we will eventually race in North Queensland. It's just a question of when, but it will take some time to bolt that together.
The other part, I guess, of George's question here was more directed at Western Australia as well. Barbagallo, is it going to be moved, that round, to a track in southern WA, Albany? What do you think about that?
I've heard about that track, but never seen anything about it.
I think that one's, sorry George, that's probably a long shot, real long shot, so I can't see that happening in a real hurry.
I wouldn't think personally that they'll go away from Wanneroo. They've spent plenty of money on the place.
And it's I think everybody enjoys it. The resurfacing there was proved to be very successful. The racing was fantastic.
Absolutely. And the people that run it do a very good job of it, so why go away from it?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there 100%. Now, we've also got some tickets to give away, not only to this round, this weekend, round 7 here at Ipswich. So if you happen to be viewing or watching, listening in this area and you'd like to come out, then if you can fire us some meaningful email and you want to throw us a question and our esteemed panel of judges decide that it's an intelligent question, we'll reward you with a couple of tickets to come out here. And ditto for Oran Park, if you're listening to us or watching back in Sydney or in the Sydney environment and you'd like to go to the next round of the championship, round 8 at Oran Park, then fire us some questions, and if we like what we see, we'll fire some passes back to you. So there's a hook to get you online tonight. We've got quite a few other emails to get through though, and we've got another here. And the question is for me. So this was inappropriate for me to read this one from Mark Hoy. One for Neil. During your coverage of the race, you seem to be able to pick the right radio chatter at the right time, and you often report from the chatter that you've heard off air whilst an incident is happening. He's just curious as to how I manage this. Is there an eager young team of wannabe race callers sitting behind you listening to each channel?
Yeah,
or is there some amazingly sophisticated computer system that picks up the screams of anguish and automatically tunes in?
It's funny, I thought about that today. I listened to the scanner for most of that 2-hour session. You become actually quite attuned to the different voices. You know, you get to know the Phil Keeds of the world and the various different engineers that look after the cars, and you can pick it up without even registering.
Mark, I'd love to tell you that I was a rocket scientist and a genius, and I was indispensable. But
in another life.
Yeah, but the reality is that you do end up knowing most of these guys and the people they work with, and typically when an incident happens, it brings the radio alive. So I wear a scanner and I have an earpiece in, which is handy because I hear all kinds of things from people like John and Bradley.
Who talks the most?
I'd say the bloke at the other end of the table gives it a fair run, but he's actually a lot better now in the recent past than he's been at different times. At one point last year, I actually deprogrammed John from my radio because he was busy waxing on to Phil about, and if we just go one more click, I was like, just turn it off. So what happens is I've got an earpiece in, and I hear our producer, I hear the other commentators, and I can also hear the competitors. But when an incident happens on my scanner, it locks on to the channel that's doing the most chatting. So invariably, if Mark Scaife and John Bowe crouch into one another, then you're going to hear the conversations that they're having with their respective crews. But you unfortunately also drop the link to all of the other cars in the field. So
it is not an easy job digesting that at times coming into.
And if you wonder why I'm grey-haired, old and stupid and I look like I do at the end of the day, then that's why. Because after you've heard a day of all that stuff, you're completely done in at the end of the day.
Very wearing, I reckon.
Yeah. It's actually it's quite wearing.
Got one here from Scott at Bathurst, just reading my local paper, and it says it's likely that Todd Kelly will go to SBR and that Richards will replace him at HRT. What do you reckon, panel? Is there any truth to that? What's the scuttlebutt in the paddock at the moment? What do you think the truth is?
Neil knows all the scuttlebutt. Don't you, mate?
I know a bit of the scuttlebutt. There's not much going on there at the moment other than there's scuttlebutt. People are talking. There's wheeling and dealing going on, and there's no secret that that's a bit of a battle at the moment for Perkins Engineering and Larry to figure out what comes next for them. They're going to lose Castrol at the end of the year. He does have a contract with Stephen Richards. Stephen Richards is a senior successful driver.
I don't think he'll let him go.
And I don't think he'll let him go because he's obviously an important part of that business, and why would you? And Larry has been very successful, as you know, dating right back to your open wheel days, John. He always lands back on his feet somehow because he's a passionate racer.
Yes, absolutely.
Meanwhile, Larry, and you got Richo's an important part of the
mix.
Yes, I understood what you were doing now.
Now, I've got a question.
Shut up, I'm still talking.
Yeah, well, everyone's heard it.
Stephen Richards is still contracted to Holden, so they don't want to let him go in a hurry. Todd Kelly's doing a good job at Holden Racing Team, so he's not going to be shifted, and meanwhile everybody's guessing as to what's going to happen.
Well, that leads the question to what are then the options? Because
I think there's a big queue outside.
There's a huge queue.
Ross Stone's door.
Yeah. I'd love to see you get your phone bill, and you get the printout of all the various phone numbers. I'd love to see some of the numbers on here.
Frequent callers.
There'd be blokes just. I happen to know that those two guys that you mentioned a moment ago have been in contact with him.
Yes,
well, let's put this bloke here on the spot because you've done a good job in recent tests.
Have you rung him?
Have you had contact with him? Is it
silly not to?
Now, I don't think you could wander down pit lane, especially in any series where someone's serious about V8 Supercar racing and they haven't spoken to Ross.
Well, the bloke up the end of the table had a very successful partnership with Jimmy for many years. Have you rung him?
No, definitely not. I'm very happy.
I rang him on his behalf
to see whether he could sell him. Bradley thinks he's the Eddie Jordan of V8 Motorsport.
And you can have him back. It'll cost you a lot though because he's very, very good.
I had a terrific relationship with him, and there wouldn't be a greater admirer of the Stone brothers in the world than I am because they are very good at what they do, and subsequently have proven that. But in the last or latter throes of my career, I'm very happy with my friend here.
That's me.
Yeah, that'll be you.
Yeah, that'll be Brad.
So I've got
Brad
a question
Jones.
for Will. Yeah, Brad Jones. How do you feel when you, obviously it's very, very disappointing to have to come back from Europe when you've been over there and running around the front of the Formula 3 field. Is there many guys, who's the best guy that you were up against and he's continued on? How do you feel when you sit and read in a magazine how they're going? Do you find that disappointing, difficult?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit strange, I suppose, because when you're over there, you do relate yourself to them when you're at their level, and you come back here and pretty much I could probably wheel off 5 of them now that are testing Formula 1 and things like that. And my teammate in 2003 was the American Scott Speed, and he was pretty highly rated. And we had a good year, and I clearly had his measure all year.
And he actually went all right when he tested for Red Bull just recently, didn't he?
Yeah, he's doing quite a good job.
And he ran the Friday at Canada, and he
Indianapolis.
didn't get to run properly in the US, obviously, because of all the other dramas.
Yeah, but we all know why that is, don't we?
Yeah, money.
Money.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
So who's done the best job, do you think, of those people? That who's got the furthest along that you were racing against at the time?
It's a little bit hard. There's a couple of guys sort of signing up for a few testing contracts. One guy, good friend of mine, Adam Carroll, his name is. He's just signed up with BAR.
Yeah, I saw him on the in the press release during the week. Just done a deal.
Yeah, and he's great.
James
great
Rossiter, I think.
James, another guy I raced all last year was James Rossiter, and but one particular Adam. I mean, he's clearly was always very talented, and I think he could go a long way. And just trying to think who else at the moment.
Where are you at in the whole A1 Grand Prix mix? Because that was quite an impressive launch with Alan Jones and the team earlier in the year. It's due to kick off relatively soon. Are you a chance at that still?
Yeah, there's quite a bit going on there, and there should be an announcement in the next week or so that there's a good chance I'll be on the list of probably 2 or 3 guys that they're going to announce.
That's
and
good.
Yeah, whether I do 5 races or 13 races, I don't know.
What about you, John? You might dust off the old full face helmet and clean the visor.
Listen, I'm never going to come on this show again if you're going to take the piss.
You would never do that, John.
You know that John raced at Long Beach?
Yeah, in a Mondial car.
Yeah.
1982.
Did you know that?
82.
I didn't know.
Chris Leach.
How'd you go?
Lucky Nuts.
Lucky Nuts. Boy, he was lucky when he bumped into him, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Lucky Nuts.
I bought some Lucky Nuts
You are a funny
during
man.
the week.
You did?
Everybody
Did you?
really enjoyed that, didn't they?
That was great, Neil.
They
so how did
they
you
still
go?
exist.
Yeah, does he still exist?
I believe so, yeah.
You don't have any contact with him?
No, I don't.
He doesn't sponsor John anymore.
No.
he was a very good enthusiast, he was. He was a good guy.
I'm glad I brought that up.
How did you,
was it
how
your
did you finish
birthday
up
on
in
Wednesday?
the Long Beach race?
How did I finish up in the Long Beach race?
I'm glad I got away with that.
Yes, you did.
I'll come back to it.
A guy squeezed me into the wall.
Oh, so not so good.
Jose Legarza, his name.
Jose Legarza.
Yeah, that's him, yeah.
Yeah, and what would he be doing now? Nothing.
No, exactly right. He wouldn't be driving for you.
He drove IndyCars for a while.
He did, yes.
Do you have a lot of shunts?
Paulie.
Yeah, Paulie, yeah.
Yeah, I think he did, as a
Mexican.
matter of fact. He was a Mexican. He is a Mexican. Yeah.
Where were you running?
I don't know.
The front?
No, not really. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, that's not going nowhere. Would you...
I could have made it up if you wanted me to.
No, first or second would have been great.
When we get our show back.
So, do you have aspirations to stick with the open wheel racing, or have you sort of figured that 4 doors is the way you're going to go in the future?
What do you think the A1 thing is? It's open wheel racing.
Yeah, but you're going to have to go one way or the other, aren't you? I mean, ultimately, you're not going to be able to
Brad
do both.
Jones goes one-on-one with some hard-hitting questions.
Yeah, let's talk about Rusty's birthday.
No, let's not.
Wednesday.
Let's not.
So what'd you get, anyway?
Got some nice presents.
Did you?
What did you get?
Clothes.
Sarah
and
give you
all
something
sorts of
special?
Hey, did you...
Can you move along, please?
Did you go out for dinner?
Yes.
Did you dress up?
No.
Did she think you were going to propose again?
No, we had a family dinner with my folks and my sister who's over from New Zealand at the moment.
How old are you?
Did you get flashbacks when you started dressing up?
Oh, shut up. Move along. Let's do some email, shall
How
we?
old are you, mate?
Yeah, see? Don't
How
attack me,
old?
boy. I'll come
How
back
old
and
are
buy
you?
you.
I'm old.
35?
Hey, don't start. It's your birthday very soon.
Look, it
If
doesn't,
you want to start throwing stones,
I'm an old
Exactly
tosser,
right.
that's just how it is.
On the 30th, it's Neil's birthday if you want to send him a cheerio, an email, card. If you'd like to stalk him, his home address.
Panel beaters at bigfond.com. This is crazy. I've heard that Eastern Creek management have told Avesco that they're only interested in having the HPDC series back next year on the same bill as the top level cars like we've got here this weekend. Wakefield Park management are apparently the same. Which categories are safe with Avesco and which ones may they have to look at running with other series? Will time tell? Steve from Bunbury, what are our thoughts, lads?
I've got a point of view.
Go.
I think that that series needs to have some standalone events. The people within this series need to be given the opportunity to draw in a crowd, and they need to be running. It's hard for level 1 and level 2 teams to prepare 3 cars or whatever the case may be and run the same weekend. And I think it's important those people involved in the series. So I think there needs to be standalone events.
Your team was the championship winning team last year. Contrast last year with what you've seen this year.
Standalone events don't work.
Yeah, but you can combine them the way they are now.
Has it regressed the category?
Yeah, I think it has.
What do you do to fix it?
In what? Sorry?
I don't think there's as much. There's not the depth of talent in the category that there was last year.
Well, one of the reasons is that we've got these ridiculous rules that prevent the level 1 teams having some involvement in the category, which is not right. I mean, it's the exact opposite to what NASCAR do, and we've got the only board of any business in Australia that sits around actively trying to make the business smaller, instead of encouraging for it to be bigger.
It makes it hard for blokes like this.
Mate, that is a pretty hard-hitting statement.
No, but it's a true statement. It's a true statement
well,
because we're squashing the ability to sell more cars. We're squashing the ability to employ more people.
The category is very important, and I think it's important for people like Will to get an opportunity, because the truth of the matter is, if he couldn't drive today, he'd just jump in the car at Bathurst. You'd see him twice a year. He wouldn't get an opportunity to show his wares.
I'm an open and public critic of a lot of the controls we've got on the development series at the moment, because it's, to me it's very important that we have a strong set of...
So would you have them at say 7 rounds of this championship as well, to combine the two, and that'd be it? They wouldn't have any standalone events?
There may be some reason for a standalone event here or there if you can justify it, but you can't justify some of what we've seen in the recent past.
Well, what about Wakefield Park?
Where do you get a good crowd, though? You get a good crowd at Wakefield Park.
Wakefield's a good example.
And you would get a reasonable crowd at Winton or somewhere.
Yeah, because they've got a market
Maybe
they can draw
Malala?
from in the area, and the cars are exciting, what have you. But there's no
Eastern Creek don't have a great crowd when we go there. I mean, it's a good crowd, but it's...
I didn't go. I was at a rally in Tasmania.
But we can't have this situation where, they're carrying 100 kilos, the data sensors are off the car.
No, I don't agree with any of that
This active
either.
discouragement of the bigger teams from fielding other cars makes the business smaller.
Yeah, but it hasn't stopped anybody.
And it hasn't stopped anybody.
Anyway, so,
no.
I mean...
but it's not a good thing.
I disagree personally with the 100 kilos. I think that's really.
Do you see? I don't mind the 100 kilos, but I think they should have all the sensors back on the car.
Yes,
I disagree
because how does a young guy learn to understand the data if you can't do the data?
They're worried too much about someone getting an advantage instead of worrying about growing the business.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, like the advantage thing's one thing, but the reality is we all know the deal here. Sit around this table. The big teams are the big teams. They will always be the big teams. Just because you say to Stone Brothers or Holden Racing Team or DJR you can or can't run a development series car makes no difference to their balance sheet or where they're going. But I strongly believe you could make the business bigger if you were able. If I turn up tomorrow and I had $500,000 and I'm from the Acme Investment Corporation and I wanted to do something, I'd like to do it with bigger, reputable players in motorsport, and that means the key stakeholders that we talk about week in, week out in the business. You don't want to go and do it with Fred Motors round the corner in some greaseball operation that doesn't.
Greaseball operation.
No,
I know what you're saying now.
Which would make the depth of the development series much greater, because that's where it lacks at the moment.
But at the moment they only have 3 rounds that aren't with our championship, and they have 4 that are.
Yeah, but if all my whole feeling on this is based on what I've seen in NASCAR. I've lived over there, I've worked there, I've gone and witnessed the events. All of the major teams' tentacles stretch right down through all the through the support. Category is not the right description. Through the various tiers: Bush, Grand National, Craftsman, Truck, and out through the Winston West and what have you. There's categories, probably the right description. Yeah. And then you'll see a John Bower. He'll leap into the Twisty suit one day and the Coca-Cola suit the next day, or whatever.
And that's fantastic.
Yep. You know, great.
You still get, with a Bush series, you still get a genuine up-and-coming champion, because aren't they restricted in the amount of events?
What happens is the races clash every now and again, and so the regular competitors can't always drive the Bush car at every event. So for say 6 races of the year, the Bush race will be at, I don't know, Hickory, and the Winston Cup race will be in New Jersey or Laguna Seca or somewhere, so they can't go in both events.
So you still ultimately end up with a champion
who's not necessarily in that.
Yeah.
I mean, Carl Edwards looks like he's going to win it all
anything
this
that
year,
brings more money in, and anything that brings more commerce and activity in, just, able to train young blokes, bring in, what's going to happen ultimately if you keep the constrictions on it all the time is you're going to struggle to find new young blokes, you're going to struggle to find decent young engineers, you're going to struggle to train young mechanics, and you don't want to have to do that in the broad baking daylight of the Level 1 show. There needs to be some places. When we all did it, as distinct from Will, who's in a different generation, but we're able to do it in production cars and some open wheelers and various levels of touring car or sports sedan racing or whatever. But now there are genuinely fewer options.
But also in terms of race meetings, we used to be able to race production cars. We used to go to Amaroo. There was a 5-race series there. There's nothing like that, and I'm a little worried that if we have one race show that turns up, which is this show, then the people need to be able to start somewhere, Neil. And I know. I hear what you're saying, but I think to have 3 rounds of that championship stand alone isn't a bad thing.
But it doesn't work.
Well, no, it depends what you term as work. What it doesn't do is drag in as many people as we get.
If you go to the marketplace and you want to bring a marketing manager or a managing director out to, let's say, Will's my man. I've decided that I'm going to
totally understand what you're saying.
You can't take them to some of those events.
That's right,
and impress them. If you bring them here, there are 30 large trucks. Yep. Network 10 are here. Big Pond are here. Choppers are overhead. The newspapers are covering it. There's next door to us. There's 25 journalists covering it.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more.
If he ends up being the next hot thing in Australian motorsport, he will capture their attention. He
will.
And if it's a great race, then you'll hear about it, and we'll all peer over the fence and go fantastic. Now the problem is when you go to Wakefield Park or to Eastern Creek, whatever it has been in the recent weeks, nobody knows.
No, you're very true. But the promoters also need some other categories. So
absolutely,
it's a very hard argument to.
You've got to have other races because you can't fit everything on this program.
No, you can't.
Steve, thank you for your email. We'll get to
more
of
those
emails.
One, didn't we?
We sure did. And the concern, I guess, about the HPDC thing, and perhaps the concern even for Formula Ford. I mean, I look at when you were coming through Formula Ford, there were some good numbers there, and you look at Formula Ford at the moment, and it's a real shame where it is. Yeah, it's a real shame.
For me personally, this weekend, it's definitely a good thing. I'm mingling with Steve's engineer, and he's engineering my car. I'm here with you guys.
See?
I'm debriefing in their garage with Steve, and I'm learning
This would not have
twice as
happened.
much.
This is exactly the reason why. I rest my case.
We'll take a break here on the panel beaters. Before we do that, we want to thank both Will Davison and John Bow. Thank them for coming along. It's great to have you with us on the panel beaters. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Go and have a Codral. No pseudoephedrine, though, because you'll get pinged.
Really?
And when we come back, on the other side of this, another birthday boy. He's celebrating a birthday today too. More in a moment on the panel beaters. This is the Panel Beaters, and we're broadcasting live from Queensland Raceway on the eve of round 7 of the V8 Supercar Championship Series. 2 hours of official practice today. Mark Scaife, the man who emerged with the fastest time, a 1 minute 10.2, and getting the edge over some of the local teams. Marcus Ambrose, second fastest. Craig Lowndes, third. Garth Tander, a good job, fourth quickest for the HSB dealer team. We'll quickly recap the top 10 here for you. Russell Ingall, Steve Ellery, Steve Johnson, Jason Bright, Glenn Seaton and Stephen Richards rounded out the 10. Someone who's celebrating a birthday today, and he's a local these days, he's a Kiwi, but his team is based here. He now lives on the Gold Coast. Please make welcome Craig Baird.
Thanks, guys.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Have you had a nice day? Although the time probably wouldn't suggest you have.
26, it's not a good birthday present, mate.
I'm looking for happy birthday here, but I don't think I've got it. Well done, Beardo.
What's going on? Why are we down in 26 when it's your home track?
Hey, because it's not easy.
I know that, but you know, you
right? Yeah.
You didn't seem too pleased, and I thought perhaps we may have seen a.
No, look, we had a pretty successful test day here last week, and we've come back. We've got a lot of different stuff on the car, a lot of stuff we're still trying, and some I'm leaving on for tomorrow, and some I'm taking off. We can put it that way.
Okay.
So some's working and some's not.
But that was obviously the plan. 2-hour test day today, effectively. This is your home track, so you've got a lot of data anyway. You know you can go back to something that's previously worked. Is that the idea?
Yeah, for sure.
Or did you just go crazy and decide that what worked wasn't good enough and you just want to change everything again?
No, we went a little bit crazy when we came here this morning, but we know there's potential, so it's just getting that balance, how fine it is around a place like this. If you haven't got the balance, the front, the rear, working together, it's,
It's an awkward track because turns 1 and 2 are quick. There's now a lot of bumps at turn 1 and a little bump on the way into turn 2 as well. And yet at the other end of the circuit, at the western end, turns 3 and 6 are tight, power down corners, hard to
and
get the car.
there's a huge bump on the way into 3. It just gets bigger every year, doesn't it?
Are you going to introduce us to a little princess?
Yeah, this is my daughter, Brianna.
Hey,
hello.
Biggest fan. How are you?
She always comes out to the racetrack with Dad on a Friday.
Yeah.
So,
does she love it?
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. Proud of her dad?
I think so, aren't you?
Yeah.
You proud of Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. She hasn't seen the timesheet, mate.
No, that's right.
She just saw the
That's
crate.
all right. When there's family, it doesn't matter.
I've probably told this story before, but there is a very good reason. We've talked during the show tonight about the bumps and how pronounced they are at this circuit, but there is a good reason why they have formed since this circuit was first, the tarmac was first laid at this track. I came here for a test day, must have been 2 or 3 years ago now, and about midday in the middle
of driving that day?
No, to report on it, you monkey.
Oh, okay, sorry.
At about midday in the middle of the test, they all the track activity stopped. All the teams and anyone like us was ordered to stand underneath those awnings in pit lane because they were doing a whole heap of detonation
they blast.
at the open cut mine next door, and they're worried about things firing up onto the track. That cannot be good for the stability of the ground that the track is being laid on.
Not only that, it was knee deep in rain in southeast Queensland a couple of weeks ago, and obviously with Coolangatta underwater and the whole area just got completely drenched. And Glenn Seaton said to me today that when they tested several weeks ago versus the test they did last week, he couldn't believe that the bumps had got worse into 1 and 3 in that period because of the amount of water that had gone underneath the track.
Yeah.
So that was another issue as well. Hey, we've got a little bit of chat here from the TAB in terms of betting. If you're interested in trying to throw some money around this weekend and maybe get a return on your investment, Marcus Ambrose $3.75, Mark Scaife $4.25, and a pretty impressive time today by Mark Scaife to edge out Marcus Ambrose on his home turf.
That is pretty quick.
Craig Lowndes $6, paying $6. Then Todd Kelly $7, Russell Ingall $11, Greg Murphy $17.
Good 11s on Ingall.
Stevie Richards $17, Garth Tander $21, and GT was 4th quickest today. Looking further down, Jason Bright 26, Rick Kelly 26, Paul Radisich 41. There's a few guys there paying some money who've got good cars and some form. We haven't necessarily seen everybody today.
Is struggling a little bit, isn't he?
I was about to say we haven't seen everybody today on new rubber, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Paul today. Did you get a chance to talk to him?
I can tell you he had some dramas today. A vibration early in the test session, which set them back. And both cars, both he and Paul Morris, had a slight oil leak coming from the gearbox, and it got to the point in Morris's car where they didn't completely do the 40 allocated laps. They actually, with the 2 red flags, it was extended to 42 laps. But Morris's gearbox got to something like 160 degrees, and in the end they said, look, you've got to come in, let this thing cool down. We don't have time to change it in the session. So he lost a bit of time.
For gearboxes to make those sorts of numbers. There was a red flag I saw at one point for David Bernard up at turn 6. What was that for?
That was just a slight engine problem. I think a rocker or something broke.
Broken rocker, I think the boys told me.
Yeah, it wasn't a major. But
and what was the other red flag for? Do you remember who brought out the first?
Brightech car that went off. I can't remember whether it was Matthew White or Steve Owen, though. They went off at turn 2 and found the kitty litter there. So, interesting day, the first 2-hour practice session. Return this weekend too, Craig, of the 20-minute warm-up on the Sunday morning after all the outcry at Adelaide. We've got a scenario where the officials are allowing the 20-minute Sunday morning warm-up at races that have the fuel stops, which we have again this weekend.
Yeah, look, from my point of view, I think that's a really good thing. Look, we're all running around. We finished today on very light fuel.
Yep.
We qualify tomorrow on very light fuel.
Yeah,
and
so
then if we just
you've learnt your car.
Yeah, and then if we just get thrown into a race with 110, 120 litres of fuel on board, our cars change a lot. They're a lot different to drive, brake bias, a lot of things change. So I think it's a great idea.
It's a bit of a raw nerve for me. I don't understand why we're here on Friday. We do a 2-hour practice session, which I'm very much in favour of. I think they're fantastic. We don't run again tomorrow until lunchtime, and we have a 20 or 30 minute qualifying session. That's it, unless you're in the top 10. Then we have our warm-up, which I really think is a fantastic thing to have back, even if it's only for this race. And then we race. I don't understand why we spend all this money to get here and we sit round all day. We don't run.
As in today?
Well today,
there were 2
hours.
hours.
I'm okay to do the 2 hours this afternoon, but tomorrow there should be an hour practice, or there should be something in the morning. The people come to see us, and now we don't have as much activity in the lead-up to the racing. Okay. This weekend, we happen to have a 20-minute warm-up, which is great, but at normal race meetings, we don't. And I just feel that most of the races, there's not enough activity for our teams over the race weekend.
I think you'd find quite a few race fans probably echo those sentiments. We've got some more email, Bradley. Sarah from the Gold Coast asking us what happens if IndyCar don't continue to come to Australia. Will the V8 still have the Indy as a street race? Well, at this stage, the Champ Cars will continue to come down here. I don't think there's any immediate threat that won't happen, but it has been discussed in the past. One of the things for the Queensland Government and their Events Corporation that support the event is that an important part of justifying, if you like, the funding that comes to make that whole event happen is the exposure that the Champ Cars provide overseas, and that's something that we don't totally have with V8 Supercar, and that's a bit of a sore point. I think with Avesco, who've continued to try and grow the category and its overseas television coverage, and in the recent past that's continued to get stronger and stronger. So there may well be a time where the Champ Cars don't come down here, and we make enough impact overseas that it could become a V8 only event. I don't think it'd lose very much. If anything, I think it'd probably be just as strong, if not stronger, without the Champ Cars. I think the V8s would well and truly hold their own.
But I think the Queensland Government would have trouble justifying if that was the case.
I understand that's been the issue in the past.
But the race should be a bit better this year because it's going to be on earlier, because when it's raining at the end of the day, we're on.
Yeah, and you can handle that.
That'll be great. I can't wait.
Thank you for your email. Keep them coming to panelbeaters@bigpond.com. A reminder that we have some tickets to give away for this weekend's event, round 7 of the championship. So if you are firing in some emails, if you're up here in Queensland, perhaps you're coming up tomorrow, we can arrange our great fan, Emily, who's looking after the email side of things for us. We'll get some details from you for what we consider to be the best email of the evening, but make sure you let us know if you're from Brisbane or from the Gold Coast or something along those lines.
We've got tickets to give away for this round 7 here, which I can cite just off to the camera left at the moment, and we've also got 6 of them. We've also got tickets for Oran Park, so if you're watching or listening and you're thinking about going out to round 8, if you fire us an email and we read it out on air, and together with the team and Emily back in the office, if we think that it's a pretty hot email, then we'll fire you some free tickets for that next event.
Brad, you've got some email.
Well, I was going to answer the question, Rusty. Why don't you read it and then I'll answer it?
Should I do a voice-over voice?
Yeah,
no, I won't.
yeah.
I've just read in a V8 magazine that V8s will be going to Shanghai, New Zealand and the Middle East next year. Is that definite? When is Avesco going to release the schedule? For those of us who want to travel, we need to start booking and looking at this and saving for tickets, etc.
Well, it's a bit of a problem for us all. We're all pretty keen to find out what the schedule is going to be like. The problem that they have at the moment, I think, is a couple of the overseas events aren't definitely locked in, and they've got to work out exactly when they're going to fit them into the schedule. So it's a problem for us all. But I believe that the board are going to be talking about it this week, and it'll be released in September.
Yep. So there you are. Thank you, Burgess, who's watching and tuning in to the show in Sydney, and we've got emails from all over the place, Neil, haven't we?
Including Mark from Brisbane. I heard last week, I think it was on Channel 10, that there was a chance a new manufacturer could enter the series by sponsoring a current Holden or Ford car. Is this true? I didn't hear that.
Not aware
I don't
of that
think
one.
so.
I don't know that we
I
did
reckon
that.
the likelihood of one of the major manufacturers putting their brand on another brand of car in this series is probably
Pretty
fairly
unlikely,
unlikely, Mark. So, but if you want to fire us another email, then you might be half a chance. The fact that you actually live here in Brisbane, certainly very close to this race circuit, and we might find an excuse to be able to fire you a ticket. We've got some more here too, Rusty.
What about this one from Andrew, who's tuned in Auckland? Fantastic. So across the Tasman there, do you think there is such a thing as a wet weather driver, especially for endurance races? Does this play a big part for Bathurst? Well, for years, Jim Richards was a bit of a noted wet weather man, wasn't he?
Richard does pretty well in the wet. Look, I don't think anybody bases their driver decision on their wet weather abilities, but it is.
You think you go better in the wet, Gold?
It's factored in.
What's that?
Do you enjoy the wet, or you?
Oh, look, I enjoy driving in the rain. There's no two ways about it. I grew up in New Zealand, did a lot of racing, so I don't mind it. But hey, look, obviously it's a bonus if you've got a co-pilot in with you that
it can be a bit of a leveler, can't it?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's wet.
It's certainly a leveler in terms of some cars, but generally a good car remains a good car, whether the grip's up or down. How old are you, Beto?
How old do I look?
He's the same age as me, and we're not going to reveal it. We're not going to reveal it.
Because Rusty wouldn't tell me,
No,
so I thought
tell
I'd have a go at you.
27, mate.
What we are talking about things like this, I
Why?
did see for Paul Radisic's 40th birthday, which is a little while ago now,
You just tipped the bucket on him.
I did. A great compilation of some of the things in Paul's career, and one of them was a race. It might have been a Formula Atlantic race, I can't remember, in New Zealand, and the two of you were racing each other on the front of the grid, and there was Beardo with the full
I've seen some of those.
Duran, slick back hairdo, Hollywood George. You've raced some good things in your time, haven't you? You've raced a variety of different cars. What's
Beardo's
the
been in the US and South Africa.
Done a few laps. Look, I was probably a bit like Brad. I really enjoyed the 2-litre days. Those cars were fantastic.
Yeah.
They were high grip. You know, I think Rydell finished a 2-litre car, like did a 13 or something around Bathurst. They were really quick, you know, like quick cars. And it's very hard to adapt sometimes to driving a car like a V8. You know, they are still tough cars to drive. When you talk about getting co-drivers to drive at Bathurst, someone that hasn't driven a V8 very much,
I was talking tyres.
Not up to the task.
going to Bathurst, pouring with rain.
Yeah, and they're not easy cars because they're very heavy. They're 1,435 kilos with the driver, and when you stick fuel and oil and what have you, that figure goes up even further.
1,700 with Brad in.
Yeah, 1,700 with Brad.
That's exactly right.
Not a lot of grip available, and I was talking to Kevin Fitzsimmons from Dunlop today, and he was formerly an engineer with Bridgestone, and I was also talking to, might have been Glenn Seaton earlier in the day, just about tyres and tyre grip and what have you, and certainly there's a generation of drivers, and you and I have talked about this, Bradley, that probably battle a bit more on the current Dunlop because you've got to set the car up what we describe as a lot more pointy to get it to overcome the fact that the new tyre is pretty hard. It's a pretty slippery car to drive. It's actually quite hard to get a comfortable setup. I'm sure both of you would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess most of the cars, the single-seaters, everything that I raced, we always had a diff.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference as well.
And we should point out that with these cars, they have what's described as a spool diff, which is just a technical description for the two rear wheels being tied together. So when you turn a corner, the inside wheel's still doing precisely the same speed as the outside wheel, and therefore the natural tendency for the car is to just push straight ahead and not want to turn the corner.
A bit like a go-kart.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, you go.
I was going to say, when Ivan Muller came out, he won you, who was a very successful 2-litre driver, and he's been the ICE champion in Europe for the last
many times,
20 years, 6 or 7. And he was driving for HRT, and I bumped into him in the VB tent, and I said, Ivan, how's it going? He used to drive for Audi, that's how I know him. And he goes, oh, Brad, can't believe we drive in this weather. Cars are big. And I said to him, you're in the best car. You know, you can imagine what it's like for some of the other blokes, and they're very difficult cars to drive in the wet or the dry. They roll around a lot, and it's hard to get the thing sorted out. And as Craig said, it takes a long time for you to get used to them, but it's even harder for someone new to come along and make the most of it.
The name Ivan Muller, that's interesting you bring that up because I think he's a part of the 888 lineup for Bathurst this year, along with Adam Macro. But timely that you made that comment about a driver who's not used to a supercar having to adapt, because that's something that the WPS team are going to have this year in Alex Tagliani. A guy
Is that actually going to happen?
I believe so.
Wow, that's a hell of a jump for him.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's raced Trans Am and a few different things before.
Yeah.
So
Nothing will quite preparing for it, though, will it?
No, exactly.
I spoke to Derek Walker today, who's down here with Marcus Marshall this weekend, and Derek's talking already to Craig Gore about 2006 with the Team Australia Champ Car thing. One thing I didn't ask him was whether or not he felt that Alex was going to do Sandown and Bathurst. But for a guy that's, you know this yourself, Beardo, with the amount of single-seater racing that you've done, when you get out of one of those thoroughbred cars and you get back in these, no disrespect to a V8 Supercar, which is a great racing car in its own, but it's like jumping on the Queen Mary. I can remember, and this is a few years ago now, and the cars are a lot better, but at one point I was driving a Holden Racing Team Commodore and a Formula Holden, which was a Rolt RT20 from Ron Turanak, the Holden V6 in the back of it. And we were at Calder, and I also did it at Mallala, where I did both categories on the weekend. So getting out of one car, change suits, pull on the gear and get in the other car. And I can remember at the end of the back straight at Calder in the HRT Commodore, you just were pushing with all your might on the brake pedal and you just didn't think you're going to stop. I mean, it just seemed like, oh, surely I don't have to brake here.
Sandown was another circuit that you did that, and I remember you went through, I think it was the third signboard back from Dandenong Road at about 15 feet, didn't you?
Yeah, not quite that high off the ground, but Scapey and I were disputing pole, and in those days there was no data in the cars, and you had to wait for the next lap to know whether or not, you had to wait for the board to come out to know how you're doing, and it was only a tenth apart all the time, and I thought, you know what, I'm sure you can get off the end of the back straight flat in one of these things. Well, you know what, you can't. 165 mile an hour, and went straight into this fence down there.
But Alex will find the going pretty tough whenever they... And those guys...
Beyond tough.
I mean, as you know, Tony's looked at our class of racing, and they were romanced by the fact that they think, I'll come down, race a V8 Supercar,
enjoy the sun,
earn a fortune, enjoy the sun, it'll all be pretty cruisy.
I need to ask you blokes, actually, but I won't name him on publicly, but I had a phone call from America the other day from a manager of a notable driver who wants... Is there anything around for Sandown and Bathurst, or are all the seats gone now?
How much money's he got? Who's got enough? I might step out.
Are there any seats left?
I don't think so.
I don't think there is.
Dry out there.
Yeah.
Damn it! There goes my 10%.
Craig Baird, thank you very much.
Craig Baird's his name.
Thank you very much for coming and spending time with us on the panel beaters. We always enjoy having you on.
Thanks,
Happy
mate.
birthday.
That was a stupid thing to say.
And we should.
Thanks, Beardo.
I missed it.
Our producer Steve Wood said, "Thank Craig, break," meaning thank Craig, commercial break, but I said, no, his name's Craig Baird. It was really lame, and it won't work for anybody at home, but there you go.
Thanks to
mate.
Brianna as well for coming in, and we'll take a quick break on the panel beaters. When we come back on the other side of this, we'll wrap up what's going on around the world and take a look at the times again from today. More in a moment.
Welcome back to Queensland Raceway, round 7 of the V8 Supercar Championship Series. You're with Neil Crompton, Greg Rust and Brad Jones from the Big Pond Media Centre, and we're talking panel beaters. I can't believe it's round 7 of the championship already. This year has scorched on by. Quite a few things have happened since we last met when we broadcast from Darwin. A couple of important things I felt. That number one, we're going back to New Zealand. That's been confirmed. We're back off to Pukekohe, which is great. The Kiwis are extremely passionate about the category, and the last thing we wanted was to not be visiting New Zealand next year. So that's been confirmed for the next couple of years, despite speculation about where we may or may not go in the future.
It was always going to be back on.
I think it was always going to be back on, and we probably said that, but it's good to have that confirmed. There was another little court case that unfolded in the recent past as well. Jason Richards has been in dispute with Team Dynamic, and he won that court case in the last 14 days and was awarded some $46,000 odd for his trouble as a result of the difficulties that those two faced. That relationship broke up at the end of last year, and he's gone off with Tasman Motorsport this year. And
it's led to a lot of speculation, about what's going to happen with Team Dynamic. At the moment, that second franchise is potentially up for sale. We know that Kieran Wills has had discussions with Tony Longhurst about the potential sale of it. That was discussed earlier in the year, so I guess it depends now on what happens from here on in with that team.
I've also got some information up on screen here for those of you that have an interest in Formula One. The German Grand Prix is on this weekend, the mobile German Grand Prix, and Friday practice, and it's always polluted by the third drivers that run there, but so far the fastest man is Alex Wurz in the McLaren. Not surprisingly, McLaren have been very strong in the recent past. What's the matter?
Nothing.
You've got a silly look on your face.
He's keeping an eye on me.
Alex has done a 1:17.199. Vitantonio Liuzzi, 1:18.429. Michael Schumacher, an 18.7. Ricardo Zonta, an 18.8. Rubens Barrichello, a 19.6. And Nicholas Chiesa at 21.4, who's back in the series this weekend. But those times are shuffling all the time as the cars have only just gone out. Michael Schumacher now has gone up to position 2. The most number of laps so far been recorded by Ricardo Zonta, who's done 11 laps, and still 14 cars have not yet run. They've only done installation laps, essentially. So Wirtz, Schumacher, Liuzzi, Zonta, Barrichello, Albers, Chiesa, Dornbos, Karthikeyan, those are the 9 drivers that have run so far.
We are trying at the moment to get you some live timing from MotoGP as well. They had a terrific round at Laguna Seca, the return of MotoGP in America, and that was won, of course, by Nicky Hayden, who is hoping to continue that sort of form on at Donington Park, the British Grand Prix. That's also the return of the 125s and 250s. They didn't make the big trip across the pond there to America, and an interesting eye. We'll try and keep one on for both Casey Stoner, who's done a great job so far this season, second in the championship in the 250s, but it's also finally the debut at this event of Anthony West aboard the brand new KTM 250. We've got some times here for you at the moment with 35 minutes remaining in that first MotoGP session there. John Hopkins is quickest on the Suzuki from Valentino Rossi. Colin Edwards, Rossi's teammate, who was also on the podium there in America, an American 1-2.
He's turned things around a little bit, hasn't he?
He's going okay, but they're tracks that he does know well from his Superbike days.
Have you got a bit of a cold as well?
I'm trying to shake it. It didn't quite knock
There's something going on in this paddock.
Alex Barros,
I'll tell you about that in the uncut version of
Carlos Checa, Sete Gibernau, Troy Bayliss, 7th fastest, Caparossi, Biaggi, Marco Melandri, Nicky Hayden, the man who won in America, currently 12th fastest, but it is early days in that session.
More email.
I was going to say, let's hope Troy Bayliss can get up there, because it would be really sad for us not to have someone in the 500 Grand Prix class.
It was tough for him. He did have a very good start to the weekend in...
he would have been very disappointed after Laguna Seca.
Well, I mean, it's a track that he knows well. He's had success there in Superbikes. He started the weekend there on the Friday, being fastest in the early part of that,
he's always
that practice
in the first
session.
3.
Yeah. So let's hope he can pick things up a little bit toward the second half, the end of the session.
I was just going to say, we've got some more email here from Stacks of Wollongong. Hi guys, do you know what's happening with the Formula 1 round next year, with it being after Clipsal, i.e. no longer a test run? Is Vesco still looking to enter the development series drivers instead of the main guys? So if you haven't caught up with that, next year, because of the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne, the Grand Prix will be later in the year. It won't be the opening round of the Formula 1 Championship. And there was some discussion because of dissatisfaction from the Australian V8 Supercar company earlier this year that the main guys may not turn up. It might be the development series guys that run next year, but I understand the Grand Prix will be round 3 of the championship next year, and I think despite the fact that Tony Cochrane, the chairman of Avesco, sometimes finds frustration with the event in Melbourne, you'll find the main V8 players will be back there, Bradley.
Yeah, and I think the only thing will be if you write your car off at Adelaide, then you won't be forced to attend that meeting. So I've no doubt that you'll have the main game there. We could not turn up to that event.
Quino from Ultimo, sorry.
No, you're right. I was just going to say, if you've tuned in the latter half of the program, we should quickly bring people up to speed with a few things that have happened at Queensland Raceway here today. First practice for the Carrera Cup, Jimmy Richards fastest from Luke Youlden, Fabian Coulthard third. If you're following the HPDC Development Series, Dean Canto, who's doing a great job at the moment,
He's
fastest.
Doing a fantastic job.
He is doing a great job, isn't he? A 1:11.09, so good time even from Dino in the Dick Johnson Racing Ford. Lee Holdsworth second fastest. Will Davison, who we spoke to earlier in the program, third. Tony D'Alberto, Warren Luff, that's the surprise there. He's 5th fastest at what is the home track for the Paul Cruikshank outfit. That's an ex-Stone Brothers Falcon. He'll be disappointed with that. He's done plenty of miles around here, Warren Luff.
Well, yeah, and it's got all the fruit on it, and there'll be a lot of people asking questions there because he drives with Marcus, I think, in the long-distance races.
That's been confirmed, yep.
I thought he had done a very good job last year in the Shell team, but for whatever reason,
he was quick, wasn't he?
He's really struggling with that car beat the team or the way he's driving, whatever it is, that they're in a bit of trouble.
I haven't spoken to Paul Cruikshank. I should find out.
Lee Holdsworth, who's driving an ex-Paul Morris car.
Yep.
Great job.
He's running in Formula Ford at the moment as well. He's a good young guy.
He's struggling a bit in
22
Formula
years of
Ford,
age.
but he seems to be able to get the job done in this series.
Just very quickly there too, Adam Macro, who leads that championship, 6th fastest. Grant Denyer, Those of you know the weatherman there from Channel 7, 7th fastest today. Very quickly, official practice 2-hour session here today. Mark Scaife fastest from Marcus Ambrose, Craig Lowndes, Garth Tander, Russell Ingall, Steve Ellery, Steve Johnson, Jason Bright, Glenn Seaton and Stephen Richards. Couple of notables, Bradley, that have had a tough day. Paul Radicic, that team tests here, thought he might have been a little further up the order, down in 19th.
And one more email to squeeze in before we say goodbye from Queensland for this week. Quino from Ultimo, with the tyre contract being up at the end of this year, what are your thoughts in regards to what V8 should do? Do we want to have happen to V8 what happened to Formula 1? Well, I don't think the tyre contract is up at the end of this year. I think the Dunlop deal, in fact, has been
renewed for another 3 years.
Yeah, I think it is, in fact. Look, we're not going down that path. We'll stay with the whole notion of a control tyre. And we've all experienced, Bradley and I and everybody else, what it's like when there's multiple tyre brands out there. Ultimately, you end up with serious winners and serious losers, more importantly, and if you're on the wrong brand of tyre, it can cripple your entire season. Exactly. So some people are passionate about the notion of bringing back a variety of tyres. I had a discussion with a fella about it today, but it's not going to happen. No. 54 seconds to the end of Panel Beaters Queensland. Closing thoughts, Greg.
Marco Melandri's just gone fastest at Donington in the UK from John Hopkins and Valentino Rossi. Really looking forward to this weekend, Neil. First pit stop race in a while where we've got fuel stops to consider, and one race, one shot at it this weekend, one shot at the 192 points.
Bradley, 10 seconds or less.
It'd be interesting if Dunlop bought out a new tyre, which is an option for next year.
There has been some discussion about that, I believe.
I just thought we should mention that. Oh, look, I'm really looking forward to the endurance format. I'm looking forward to the big endurance races this year, and we'll see what happens on Sunday.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Greg. We've got a 300k race on here this weekend. Just reiterating the point that Mark Scaife was the fastest man today by a tiny fraction over Marcus Ambrose and Craig Lowndes. Ricardo Zonda has gone quickest in practice, the first practice session for the German Grand Prix in the third Toyota. Thank you very much for your company tonight. We look forward to seeing you again when we broadcast live from Oran Park. That's it from the Panel Beaters. See you next time.
Happy birthday next week, Uncle Neil.
Yeah, happy birthday, Neil.
See ya.
See ya.